They're just constantly on us. TV, radio, the mail, on our phones, texting. Hey, Bill, Tim Walz here. You up? They're everywhere all the time. Jesus Christ, off. Let mommy put her purse down. What I could see is replacing the vice president because, yeah, she's just not very popular anywhere. And it didn't seem to work out. And I don't know, that's been done before on a ticket. I just think she's a bad politician.
The Democratic Party is in full panic mode, trying to figure out who, if anyone, can breathe life back into their fading chances for re-election. And guess who's suddenly back in the spotlight? Kamala Harris. Because apparently the best idea they've got is to bring forward the same vice president who's struggled to inspire even her own base. Enter Bill Maher. He's never been a fan of Kamala, and time hasn't changed that one bit. In a recent monologue, Maher didn't just question the idea of her running in 2024, he tore it apart completely. His criticism wasn't subtle or polite. It was blunt, fiery, and brutally honest. If Democrats were hoping for a smooth rebrand, this wasn't it. Maher made it clear, putting Kamala front and center again won't solve the party's problems. In fact, it might make them worse. So grab a seat, this debate is only heating up, and things are bound to get messy.
When Joe Biden was still hanging on to be the candidate, many of the pundits said that to switch him out this late would cause chaos. Yeah, that was never my position. And indeed, what happened was Kamala Harris said, "Oh, look, I guess it's my turn." And the next day, a grateful nation handed her $500 million. The only reason we stay stuck in permanent campaign mode is money. It's estimated this year that $16 billion will be spent on political ads. It's time we admit that the endless campaign exists only to enrich advertisers, political consultants, and what's left of the news media.
Devin, as Joe Biden tried to hold on to his place as the Democratic nominee, many political insiders warned that replacing him too late would throw the party into chaos. But not everyone agreed. Bill Maher, for one, never bought into that argument. And sure enough, once Biden stepped aside, Kamala Harris quickly stepped in, saying, in effect, "Well, I guess it's my turn." The very next day, she raked in $500 million in donations. But let's be honest, that's what keeps the campaign machine running. Money. Experts estimate that political ads alone will cost around $16 billion this year. We're stuck in a never-ending election cycle. And it's not about democracy. It's about keeping the cash flowing to media outlets, ad agencies, and consultants. Maher didn't hold back. He said what many had been thinking for a long time. Biden clearly didn't have the mental sharpness to run for a second term. It didn't take weeks or months to figure that out. It took years. And those who pointed it out early were often mocked, silenced, or buried under so-called fact checks. But the moment Biden struggled during the debate, all the whispers turned into a loud, unavoidable truth. Suddenly, the conspiracy theories looked more like common sense. So, how did the Democratic Party react? Did they rise to the occasion with a fresh face or bold new leadership? Not at all. Instead, they handed the reins to Kamala Harris, vice president so rarely seen or heard from, you'd think she was in hiding. She faced no real competition, no serious questions, and the result, one of the most embarrassing defeats in modern political history.
People didn't used to get sick of the candidates because you barely ever saw them unless you happened to be standing at the back end of a train. But now we never stop seeing them. The winner in modern elections comes down to who we're less tired of. They're just constantly on us. TV, radio, the mail, on our phones, texting. Hey, Bill, Tim Walz here. You up? They're everywhere all the time. Jesus Christ, off. Let mommy put her purse down.
One of the simpler reasons Bill Maher believes Kamala Harris helped tank the election. Voter fatigue. People were just tired of seeing her everywhere, not in a strong, presidential way. It felt more like a non-stop PR campaign than real leadership. Alongside Tim Walz, she seemed to pop up constantly, in your emails, on your social media feeds, interrupting your YouTube videos, and even creeping into your TikTok scroll. It wasn't inspiring, it was overwhelming. The constant exposure didn't earn trust. It wore people down. What was meant to build excitement ended up doing the opposite. It annoyed people. Instead of sparking confidence, the campaign felt like being pressured by a brand you'd never buy, selling something you never asked for. Harris came across not as a leader with a clear vision, but as someone trying too hard to be liked and failing. As Maher put it bluntly, this wasn't just bad messaging. It was political self-sabotage in high definition. Overexposure didn't win votes, it pushed them away.
What I could see is replacing the vice president because she's just not very popular anywhere, and it didn't seem to work out. And I don't know, that's been done before on a ticket. I just think she's a bad politician.
Another reason Bill Maher believes Kamala Harris was never going to succeed. She's simply not a strong politician, and not in the relatable outsider kind of way, but in the visibly unpolished, unprepared kind of way. Maher could list plenty of her missteps. But one issue stands out. She struggles in unscripted moments. As soon as she's asked a question that isn't straight from her talking points, everything falls apart. It's like watching someone freeze mid-sentence, unsure of where to go next, except the whole world is watching. We've all seen it by now, the infamous word salads. Long, confusing responses that go in circles, don't say much of anything, and leave everyone scratching their heads. They aren't just awkward, they're a red flag. In a high-stakes election, that kind of communication gap is a major liability.
You need to get to go. I need to be able to get where you need to go.
I do believe that we should have rightly believed, but we certainly believe that certain issues are just settled. And that's why I do believe that we are living in real unsettled times.
6 Oven, in scripted interviews, Kamala Harris often struggles to deliver a clear message. She stumbles, backtracks, and leaves viewers more confused than informed. For someone who's spent years in public office, her communication style still feels oddly unpolished, lacking the clarity and confidence expected from someone at her level. In politics, how you say something is just as important as what you say, and time after time, Harris shows up without either. Her delivery often feels disjointed and uncertain. Even when the questions are predictable and friendly, Bill Maher isn't being unfair, he's just saying what a lot of people already see. If you need a reminder, just look back at the time she mistakenly referred to North Korea as one of America's allies. That moment wasn't just a slip-up, it was a symbol of a larger problem, a candidate who seems unprepared, even when everything is supposed to be under control.
The United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. In the North, we see a brutal dictatorship, rampant human rights violations, and an unlawful weapons program.
Let us be honest, how does someone accidentally call North Korea an American ally? That's not just a minor slip-up, it's a serious mistake with global implications. And maybe we could laugh it off if it came from someone else. But this is Kamala Harris we're talking about. She's developed a reputation for awkward, confusing comments, and not just once or twice. At this point, it's practically her trademark. She doesn't just make gaffes, she owns them. Now imagine her in the Oval Office, sitting in a meeting with NATO, the G7, or in tough negotiations with China or Russia. One poorly timed or unclear comment in that room, and things could get very tense, very fast. Translators would scramble, leaders might pause, and global markets could even react. These aren't harmless mistakes. In a role that demands precision, confidence, and international diplomacy, these missteps can come with real consequences. Bill Maher wasn't just pointing out flaws, he was sounding the alarm. In times like these, we can't afford a leader who keeps tripping over her own words.
This is Kamala's great dilemma. Trump is invulnerable to an October surprise, but she is very vulnerable because she's the one who is still undefined. And as she showed in this week's Bret Baier interview, her go-to when attacked for her own actions is usually Trump is worse. Okay, we know that. But now undecided voters want to hear about you. They want someone to vote for. This election comes down to this. Trump has a coalition of voters made up of A, people who really do like him, and B, people who think with all of his flaws, he's still better than far-left insanity.
Kamala Harris struggled badly on the campaign trail. Anytime she was challenged, she seemed to fall back on one tired line. Well, Trump was worse, as if just not being Donald Trump was somehow enough to qualify her for the presidency. But that's not a real platform, it's not leadership. It's the political version of saying, at least I'm not the other guy. And that's not a plan. That's a weak excuse. According to Bill Maher, one of the real tests of her leadership was whether she could push back against the extreme, often unreasonable demands coming from the loudest corners of her own party. Would she think independently, or give in? The answer became clear. She gave in again and again. Whenever the moment called for strength, Harris backed down. Rather than leading with principle, she often echoed whatever slogan or hashtag was trending that week. From her end, for a lot of voters who want real conviction and honesty, that wasn't just disappointing. It was proof that she's not ready to lead a deeply divided country that's searching for direction, not someone who simply follows the crowd.
And the voters' big doubt about Kamala is, are you part of far-left insanity? The attack ad I see 10 times a day, and a question Bret Baier aimed at her on Wednesday was about her saying in 2019, that she supported providing taxpayer-funded exchange operations to illegal immigrants in prison. Something that's actually never happened and has no real bearing on anybody's life. But it's a litmus test for voters out there who want to know of the Democrat, is there anything your fringe can suggest that will ever make you say, no, that's f***ing ridiculous?
For many voters, this was the final straw. After 4 years of exhausting hype culture wars under President Biden, the country was asking one simple question: would Kamala Harris change course or push it even further? Unfortunately, she gave no answers, no clear message, no strong direction. If anything, her silence, or worse, her open support, made it seem like she was fully prepared to double down on the same divisive, performative policies that had already split the nation. At a time when Americans were looking for steady leadership, common sense, and a break from the constant chaos, Harris delivered none of that. Instead, she offered vague promises wrapped in activist language. So when it came time to vote, the public didn't hesitate. They turned to the one person who was actually speaking to their concerns: Donald Trump, whether people liked him or not. He was offering something Harris simply couldn't hope for: economic recovery, stronger borders, energy independence, and the kind of firm leadership that doesn't crumble under pressure. For millions of Americans, Trump wasn't just another candidate. He was a course correction.
Joe Biden generally did a good job, but sure, I wish we'd tightened the border sooner, as we have done now, and trust me, I learned my lesson, and that's never going to happen again. Kamala, it's so important that you win this election, not just for the sake of retaining a real democracy and for the good of the world, but also because I predicted a month ago you'd win this thing, and if you blow it, it's going to make me look bad.
Another major reason Bill Maher believes Kamala Harris is unfit for the presidency. Just look at her track record as the so-called border czar. It was one of her biggest responsibilities. She completely dropped the ball. Under her watch, the southern border didn't just have problems, it fell apart. Millions of illegal immigrants crossed into the country, overwhelming local communities, draining resources, and creating real security concerns. And as Maher and others have pointed out, this wasn't just about families looking for a better life. The border became a major pipeline for trafficking people, drugs, and weapons. Fentanyl poured into the U.S., overdose deaths skyrocketed, and illegal firearms made their way into criminal networks. Law enforcement couldn't keep up, and communities across the country paid the price. So where was Harris? She was largely silent, offering brief, vague statements, while avoiding any real accountability. This was her chance to show she could lead under pressure. Instead, she disappeared from the issue entirely. If this was her leadership audition, she didn't just fail, she never showed up.
Kamala, ever since I put down my marker on you and said you'd win and I wasn't even worried about it, everyone, everywhere, on the road, in LA, texting me, emailing me, stopping me in restaurants, asking me, Bill, are you sure? No, I'm not sure. What am I, Kreskin? I'm not sure, but that's my gut. I think Kamala Harris wants this. I think she can do this, to say nothing of, if she loses, she'll never hear the end of it from Joe. I told you I was the only one who could beat him, Biden.